Ancora candele, Marco? Dai, mi sembra di stare ad una veglia funebre.
È solo un po' di atmosfera.
Sembra un set fotografico.
In effetti un po' lo è.
Dai, su, posa queste candele, vieni da me.
Sei bella. Ti voglio guardare. Voglio che ti spogli per me.
Ma così non mi viene, dai.
Ti metto un po' di musica.
Non ci riesco, scusa.
Dai, fallo per me.
Viene, dai. Fallo tu.
Se lo faccio io, poi però lo fai pure tu.
Ok, comincia.
So, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Nothing to lose. No need to hide. It's just you and me, girl. Just you and me and love.
So this is a clip from an Italian film that's called L'amore imperfetto, Love is not perfect, or something. And there's something interesting, I think, in this clip. And it's not the muscles of the guy. There's actually work of ours in there. Did anyone spotted it?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
One? Okay.
All your students are.
So if you look here in the beginning, okay, can you see that United thing on the wall?
Yeah.
There's a poster that we designed a few years ago. Let me see if we can see it. There he is. Here it is. It says, United we stand, Europe has a mission. It's a poster of a movie, but the movie never existed. It was a fake advertisement campaign for a movie that we invented. We invented a movie and we did a campaign. I don't want to actually talk about that project, but it's interesting to me to see why, like, what is this thing doing in this film? What is our poster in this movie? Why is it there? And I don't know, of course. I don't know the director, I don't know the actors, I don't know the screenplayer. I don't know nothing about the movie. I just happened to see it by chance. And it could be there as just a poster. You have a house, you need to shoot a movie, so you put up stuff on the walls to make it more realistic. Just a generic poster, and no one knows what it is. No one knows that it's a fake movie. No one knows that it was designed by us. No one knows nothing about the original artwork. Or it could be there as an artwork, actually. So the guy doing the striptease is a collector, and he's owning an artwork of ours in his own house. It's possible. Unlikely, but possible. Or it could be actually a movie poster. It could be that the director knows that the poster is fake, that the movie never existed, the director of this movie, of the Italian one. And he's playing with his own audience. It's kind of a, how do you call it, like a tongue-in-cheek thing, where he's like, let's see who recognizes that during the striptease. And to me, this is interesting, not because it's a work of ours, but because there is no answer to that question. We cannot know why the poster is there. And that actually depends on who's watching, depends on the audience. Like, depending on how much information you have, you're going to interpret it in a different way. So Nadine, for example, recognized our work, so for her it was evident, but any of you will just see a movie poster in another movie. So depending on who's the audience, the meaning of the work completely changed. I like that a lot. I like works that's meaning changes depending on who sees them and where they see them. A painting is a painting, like what it is and its own, like the medium and the content is in one single object, is one thing. If you take a painting, you put it in a gallery, it's a painting. If you throw it away, you put it in a garbage, it's still a painting. If you put it in a museum, it's a painting. It's not changing what it is. It may change value, of course. More likely, the one in the museum is more expensive than the one in the garbage, but it's the same thing. With digital artworks and with a lot of the things we do, it's not like that. The object changes depending where you put it, depending on the context, and depending on who sees it. We like that. I think that, I don't know why, but in the art in general, too much focus has been put on the artist and on what they do and how they do it, like the moment of production, like their vision, their inspiration, and how they make art. And too less focus has been on the audience, like who sees art? Like where does it go once it's produced? Why people see that stuff? Do they use it? Do they understand it? Where does it end up? In a museum, or in the internet, or in a TV, or in the garbage? And maybe because we don't have huge egos, like me and her, we always identify ourselves, I would say, as much with the audience as with artists. We never made that leap of like, oh, I'm no longer a viewer. Now I'm a producer, I'm an artist. We actually never crossed that line. We keep like going back and forth between these two things, like doing something and watching the reactions and then incorporating the reactions. Very often we use the audience as like raw material almost, as like something you can manipulate in order to make the work. So like without the audience, you wouldn't have the work itself. So in this sense, I'm not saying audience as someone who just happens to see your exhibition or read about it in a magazine or whatever, but the audience becomes themselves the form that the work takes. We work a lot with the internet since the beginning and with videos, but these things, the works we did are pretty much dispersed on many different mediums. They're not all on the internet, they're not all in a gallery, they're not all in a video. They're kind of like a little bit everywhere. Sometimes even the same work could be in these different places at the same time. When I say the internet, the aspect that, the thing of the internet that is more interesting for us, I would say they're probably the problems that it raised, the moral or ethical problems that this mediated communication brought about, especially using social media, social networks. So not much the surface of the internet, like its shape, its colors, its design, but more what's behind it. In this sense, we could say that we're not much into the web surfing thing, more into the deep web diving, like going below the surface and see what's behind there. That sometimes is actually non-visible from the surface. If you look at the surface of it, it's invisible. This is also a reason why we are very interested in the dark internet. You know, the dark internet is a huge part of the internet that's not visible. It doesn't surface. That just stays down there, and it's kind of harder to reach. And we find that super interesting. When we make works, we try or we tend, or we're not very good at creating stuff that's like monumental and big and iconic. But again, probably more into trying to show, to have a little glimpse of what's invisible, what's not there, what's absent. That's a question we always ask ourselves. You know, you see something, you're like, okay, I see that, but what is it that I'm not seeing in this moment? And why is it that I'm not seeing it? Is it someone I don't want to go into conspiracy theories, but I think it's a very, very important question to ask yourself all the time. Once we do a work, if it's a digital or internet, whatever thing, we put it up in our website. Our website is 0100101010101.org. And in this sense, I would say that our website is almost like our studio. It's a place where you get to see the works whenever they are done, and sometimes even while they are in progress. Maybe we should start and watch a few works.
Maybe we should start from like.
Let me say one thing. We may gonna have a kind of a Q&A thing at the end, but if you have questions or comments or complaints, please just do them while we talk. Feel free to interrupt. I really like that. Makes me feel like I'm not talking to a wall.
Sydney,
Go, Sydney.
what's up?
Good question. You should ask it to the. You should ask it to the myself of 20 years ago.
No, that's a very good question, and I hope it's connected to the way we do art. When we had to pick up a name for our website, we thought, what is something that people can really see if they don't copy and paste it, if they don't do this action of copying and repeating. And we came up with a name that's impossible to remember, only Franco does. So you really have to go and see it somewhere, copy and paste it. And a lot of our practice is about not being original and not being like the protagonist of our own art. So we just threw dices, and that's what came out.
You want to talk about work?
Yeah, let's talk about like an older piece in connection to like a recent one. But one of the first project we did together was called Life Sharing. This project was commissioned by the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. And it was something that might seem absurd nowadays. It was our home computer shared with everyone online through our website. So every time you type the address of our website, you wouldn't see a website, you would actually enter our home computer. And you could see anything. This is how it looked back then. So there was this like image saying, now you are in my computer. You clicked and you could really go through all the folders, and you could see our projects, our bank accounts, our music files, our private emails, and like whatever we had on our computer, whatever we were working on. And it's kind of strange nowadays to talk about this project because there were no social media back then. So it was kind of weird to do something like this. Like you usually cared a little bit about your privacy, and this was totally transparent. Like people could see our private emails before we were reading them, and they could see and copy whatever was on our website, including the system. We were using only free software. We were running Linux on our computer, so you could copy anything, all the contents of our laptop or our computer, and you could copy the system itself. So the idea was to abolish somehow this simulation that the website creates. Like this is like my vitrine to the world, like I put the nicest thing. This was removing this sort of simulation, and you would get directly to the content. And it would, to go back to the studio now, the website is like our studio, but this was not only our studio, it was also our home, like the place we were putting our private things. This was the email, for example. You could see what we were like buying things online, so you would see what we were eating every day. Beans and pasta, pretty much every day. And this is are some of the screenshots. So some were really kind of like crazy looking, some others were more understandable. And to us, there was no distinction between what is art that we produce, and what is the tools we use to produce it. Like everything was in the same place. I don't want to go too deep into this project because it was really huge, but yeah. The only thing is like there was no social media. So it's like if today you would share, it's hard to say like computer, if you would share your phone with anybody, like your contacts, everything you have.
It was not an interactive website. You could only see stuff and copy anything. You could see everything and copy everything, but you could not change anything. In that sense, it's like a website. You know, anything you see, you can grab, but it's not that you can move stuff around and so on. Okay. So for us, also, that part was very important. It's not an experiment in communication. It's more like, actually 2 ways, but a little bit more in a I would say, like an exhibitionist part from our side and like voyeurism on the other side, like people spending hours reading our emails or going to archives and so on. But it was not direct communication. Oh,
Several.
yeah, a lot.
I think we were very naive when we started this project. We thought it would have lasted forever first, but we actually stopped it after 3 years because of another project, which caused like, us to close this. And then like, of course, like the first thing that people did was hacking our computer. So one day, all like the backgrounds of all our pages were featuring images of ships suddenly. Or our computer was used to hack into other people's computer. Or more simply, like people were reading our emails and started answering the emails. So we know somebody who got like commission from a museum, like answering, like pretending to be us. Or more simply, like journalists started to call instead of sending emails because they knew the emails would be published right away. So they didn't want to be exposed, and they started calling. But we realized like living so publicly also changed our way of behaving. Like you can't really ignore your scene constantly, even if there was not much, like there were almost no photos online back then. So it was all text and like a little bit
most of it was documents and emails and so on.
And
bank statements.
Exactly.
I remember Ito Steil, the writer and artist, when she saw the project, she's like, what you guys are doing is abstract pornography. Like there is that pornography thing of like revealing everything, like raw content, but it's also abstract because there was really very few photos of us or any that would be considered prurient sexually.
So when we were working on this project, we also started working on another project, but it took almost 10 years to finish it. We're very, very slow. So we realized like some people who tried to share like music online, but they were using like peer-to-peer system, they were sharing more than they thought. So through very simple hack, like something very stupid, we realized we could enter people's computer. So it was somehow the opposite of what we were doing with live sharing. With live sharing, people could enter our computer, and we realized we could enter other people's computer. And so we started copying their files and documents and everything. And at some point, we decided to copy just the images. So the internet evolved in the meantime, and there were tons of images available, like private photos available on this computer. We started to copy them, and we became sort of obsessed with this idea. We were waking up at night trying to see if we could find some other photos. And we decided to stop at some, when we reached like 10,000 images, we said, okay, enough. Like we're getting like really mad about this. So let's just turn these into our project and finish with this obsession. So we made another project called The Others. And with these 10,000 photos, we made a slideshow. Maybe I can show like a few minutes of it. The whole slideshow is very long. It's like more than 2 hours, almost 2 hours and a half. But I'll show you
I think,
a few minutes of it.
just a couple of words before we watch the slideshow. We chose the slideshow, of course, because it's the kind of the vernacular way for people to show their own photographs. Like nowadays, nobody does slideshow anymore. Like probably you never did a slideshow in your life. But my mom, when she comes back from vacation, she would do a slideshow, and have all the parents, people coming over the family and watching the slideshow. So we kind of like that very popular way of showing these images, and. The only one thing we did technically to the slideshow is that usually slideshow are super boring, also because they are kind of repetitive. You give it a time to each frame. There's like a second, and then boom, 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 boom. And we had 10,000 of these photos, so it was too long. So we decided to give a different timing to each single photo, from like very fast ones to slower ones. So the slideshow, the rhythm of the slideshow is a little bit trying to replicate the rhythm that we were going through when watching these photos. Like, you know, boring, boring, cat, 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 woman, or boring, boring, accident. Like, you know, you see something that's interesting, you slow down, and then you get bored again, you speed up and so on. So we try to keep that kind of pace in the slideshow.
And then one last thing I didn't say, it's we downloaded all the photos from these private computers and the music, and surprisingly, we realized most of these people were playing very, very famous songs and just doing a cover version of these songs. So we thought about using these songs as soundtrack for the slideshow. But we should see it otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to show you
seems too
3 minutes of that. Well, the beginning doesn't really have a beginning or an end, but so you get an idea.
So if you think to it, like each weekend, millions of people take millions of photos. Some of these photos will probably end up on social networks. Some of them will make it to a website, but most of these photos will remain invisible in the memory cards. These were invisible photos on people's computer. I think not even their creators, not even the people who took the photos saw them. And there's not much distinction between these photos, which are private, and public photos. Like they're the same photos you would find online. my photos are exactly the same as this one. So the distinction between a private photo and a public photo, private life and public life, is really becoming blurred, more and more blurred every day. But with this work, we didn't want to mock these people. I think it's a sort of like celebration of everyday life. We could be the protagonists of this. Like, it's called The Others, and each of us is the other of the others. So it could be anyone.
Let me read you.
There's a nice quote. There's something we like to read sometimes about the imaginary audience, the fact that each of us is thinking there is an audience out there. And
do you guys ever heard of imaginary audience? It's like a... No? I mean, neither. So the imaginary audience refers to an egocentric state where an individual imagines and believes that multitudes of people are enthusiastically listening to or watching him or her. Though this state is often exhibited in young adolescents, people of any age may harbor a fantasy of an imaginary audience. This is an old definition. Of course, I guess we should now update this to like people of any age may like totally harbors a fantasy of an imaginary. It's like a slight disturb of personality that's becoming the norm for all of us. Like, this is a state where we all live, or at least I live. It's imaginary audience.
Yeah, it seems like the internet is running on exhibitionism on one end and voyeurism on the other, or
or like narcissism and like, what's the opposite of narcissism?
Sorry. And masturbation.
And masturbation,
yes.
possibly.
Yes, you should come up with.
I'm not happy with exhibitionism
me
and
neither.
narcissism. I'm
It's
sure.
like,
Is there any like psychiatrist? I don't think so. I want to talk to a psychiatrist. I'm sure there's like a better definition. Of
You
what goes
should
on
talk to a psychiatrist.
I should talk to a psychiatrist.
I suggesting.
We also
sharing and spying. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I
another
like
way of putting it.
dichotomies.
We also show these works. So this is, for example, a way we would exhibit this projection, The Others, in a museum context. So it's this like a wrong projection. It's kind of tilted, and it's on the door instead of the wall, and it's like wrongly keystoned. So again, it's like we're trying to replicate that vernacular way of showing a slideshow. We set it up as if my mom would set it up.
So we could say like so many things about putting pictures of ourselves online, the way it's somehow changing our society. We do put images online to show that we have been somewhere. Like, you know this way of saying, like, Pixar didn't happen. Like, if you don't show you have been to a party, it's as if you haven't been there. And you actually go there to prove you've been there. You go there to sort of create your mediatic existence, like you edit your mediatic existence, like celebrities used to do in the past. Now everyone is involved in this process of shaping the way we think people should see us. And again, like, to go back to Ito Starter, which we quote to the nausea, like our students know, she said something really funny in a text, like, have you ever put a photo of yourself naked online? Congrats, you are immortal, because that picture is gonna stay there forever. No way, like, you're gonna be able to take it off the internet. So yeah, one big issue in the future will be how to disappear from the internet, how to edit our pictures out of it.
Move to something else.
Yeah, maybe let's move on. We'll see a few projects, and if you have questions, again, like, feel free to ask.
Do you guys have any questions right now, or should we move on? It's more than 2 hours, 10,000 photographs. I mean, it's of course a super big theme and topic, and I'm already a little bit old for that probably. This is more of a problem of the next generation, I think, because when I was a teenager, the internet was not there, and that's exactly when it would have been really bad for me. Like, I have a lot of stuff that's really way over embarrassing. It's really problematic. If I would have been a teenager during the internet, if that stuff would be out there now for you to Google on me, I probably wouldn't be here now. And so I guess this is more a problem of of you guys, or even people that's younger than you, like managing your reputation, managing your online visibility or something. And I guess that goes with education as well. I guess it's going to be kind of parallel to what kind of education you got. You're a richer person, come from a rich intellectual family, you're more likely to have a really good internet reputation. You come from a poor family, less educated family, you're more likely to have a bad internet reputation. Like, no one ever told you if you are drunk and throw up at a party, don't get don't get a picture of that. If you do coke, don't get a picture of that. Don't put it online.
But also we're talking about images are kind of the surface of things, and Franco mentioned before, like we always try to go deeper and see what's below the surface. And I don't think it's so much a matter, a problem of pictures. The problem is every time we are using a device. I mean, every time you're using a phone, you're being geolocalized. You have been sent unwanted advertisement. You are being tracked. You're being spied. So I think the pictures are just the surface of this problem. But it's connected to the fact that technology is now everywhere, and we can't really do without.
Well, I just think that we were not really prepared for that, though. Like in the past, people who had this kind of visibility of pressure was like celebrities or politicians, somehow artists maybe, or actors, but they were also, most of them, good at managing that image, that pressure. Not all of them, the history is full of cases where they imploded on their own image, like Marilyn Monroe or Kurt Cobain. I don't know, people who suffered because they didn't manage anymore their own personality or something. So I think we are kind of all wrapped up in this game now. It's just that we're not good at that. So we need to keep up with that. Like how the moment you put a lot of information about yourself out there, you also need to be aware of the consequences of that. How people perceive you, in a sense, could also be interesting because then you get a little bit more, you get a glimpse of what it is to create a persona that's like creating almost from scratch. So you get a glimpse of what it is to be like a politician. You kind of get you can see the mechanism from the inside a little bit.
Let's talk about being someone else. Focusing too much on ourselves. Let's talk about being someone else. Let me show some pictures.
Yeah, again, like I said in the beginning, we are not so interested in the act of production, on the authorship of author reality. Like, I'm an artist, this is my thing, I have a vision, and I want to show it to the rest of the world. A little bit more in what happens before and after that moment, like where this stuff comes from, and especially where it goes. We used a lot of different aesthetics, in fact, in our making art. We never really created our own aesthetic, our own style, recognizable style. So, for example, one of the first work we did is we pretend to be the Vatican. We created a fake website of the Holy See back in the 90s, where this was still possible, and we created a fake website of the Holy See. So aesthetically, it would be exactly the same as the official one. This is it. That's how it looks. But then if you go through it, the text that were in there was they had little minor modifications. Nothing was super offensive or super explicit. No swearing or nothing. But little, we were pulling in few small ideas that we kind of thought were we really believed in these little ideas. Example, contraceptions. Catholic Church has always been against contraceptives. Okay, And we thought, we changed our mind. From now on, you guys can use it because HIV is spreading, so it's good to use contraceptives. Or light drugs, why not? And stuff like that. But it was amazing to see that just because the surface of it, the aesthetics of it was believable, people kind of believed it. They didn't, just because of the aesthetics of it, the power of the images. And another time we did the work using the Nike, the shoe company aesthetic. So we made an advertisement campaign that looked like Nike had done it. It was a kind of believable, like designed to be believable. And the idea was that Nike just bought a square in the center of Vienna, capital of Austria, and they just changed the name from Karlsplatz to Nike-Platz. So they now owned it, and as an advertising campaign, they just renamed it after the company. And of course, people got real upset and complained and so on. So same thing, we just tried to, since the Vaticano, the Holy See thing worked, we tried to make it a little bit bigger and go out from the internet in the streets and see, will this work? Is it really is it like creating a believable enough aesthetic enough to pass as like a huge corporation? And it worked, just for a little while, but it worked. Another time we invented an artist. It was the beginning. We had to, we were starting probably like younger than you guys, and we needed to make our art. It's time. School is over. You need to become an artist. Find your aesthetics. Find your way and following it. And we were like, I don't really know what I want to do. Like, why should I need? I'm too young to choose what I want to be in. I don't want to grow up old. Blah blah blah. So instead, we created a whole artist with a personality, with a biography, with some artworks.
I will go through very quickly because they're very gruesome pictures here. Okay.
Yeah. And you can watch it online if you are like more morbid, like we are. So we created an artist because we felt it was very liberating. Because we wanted to make art. So this is a way of you have to create. If you have creating an artist, it has to stay together. The story needs to be kind of believable enough and interesting enough for people to be interested. And that's the craft part of it. But at the same time, you're not yourself. So we find it very liberating. This is not stuff that I have to defend against all the criticism or the studio visits. It just sets you free to be someone else. Yeah, then at one point it became too big and people wanted to meet him, and we got invited to the Venice Biennial, so we killed him. So we got rid of the problem.
We couldn't show him.
And yeah, it's a long story, but that's enough, I guess, to get it. And then we recently used, we decided to use the aesthetic of a living artist. Instead of inventing one from scratch, we decided to use the aesthetic of an artist that's famous enough, and see what happened. Is it possible for you to understand the work of an artist and aesthetic of an artist and add a new work to his, or is it totally impossible? Are these guys really as genius as they seem to us, as mythical and so on? And so we chose Maurizio Cattelan. He's an Italian artist. We know his work very well. Maybe that's why we've always been really interested in his work. And I guess you guys are all aware of his work, right? He does a lot of, right? Is anyone who never heard of Maurizio Cattelan in the past? Raise your hand. Don't be ashamed. You never heard of him? Okay. He's a big guy, like one of the maybe 10 living artists or something. And he does a lot of taxidermy animals, works that are kind of funny and surreal at the same time, weird, and very photogenic. Like people love them. People take a lot of photographs, and that's also why. And they're very expensive. Things like this could be like $1 million or something, like super. So Maurizio Cattelan. We learn where Maurizio Cattelan builds his own sculptures, like where the guy that does his taxidermy for him, and we went there. It's a taxidermy in Italy, and we had the aesthetics, we had the tool, the person to make it, the craftsman, and we just needed an idea. And since we're not genius like big artists, we just decided to get something from the internet. And the internet has always helped us, and in the shape of an epic fail lolcat in the cage. We thought this could have been a Maurizio Cattelan work, It was funny, but not so funny. Weird, a little bit creepy. Somehow liberating or something, the little parrot. Anyway, we sent this photograph to the taxidermy guy, handed it this thing. So the one before you saw, that was a photo montage, like a Photoshop thing, 2D. This is an actual object. This is a sculpture with a real cat. It's dead, but it's real. It's a taxidermy cat. And a real bird, dead bird, taxidermy bird, in a real cage. Now, I say this because a few people, when they saw the object, were like, oh, I thought it was a Photoshop. They thought that even the work was, forget about it. It's a sculpture. Then we exhibited it as a Catalan sculpture. So without our name there, our name was nowhere. This was an official exhibition of Maurizio Catalan new work. So of course collectors are scolding.
It was a collective show, so it's kind of believable. It's difficult to put up an entire show of an artist you are not, but it was inside a collective show. Yeah,
we did a bunch of other works, and people wanted to buy, of course, collectors, because Catalan is very expensive, and a lot of people want it. And the gallery, the owners of the gallery, they knew that it was of course, they were doing this kind of thing together, so they knew what to say. They would just say that the work was already sold. People reviewed the show, and they liked it. Most of the reviews were good, like using the usual rhetoric that critics and curators use about masterpieces, like the usual subtle, ironical, slightly subversive Catalan style, sign, and so on. And then after about a month, we revealed it, that it was not, not only that it was not actually Catalan, but it was not even our work. It was actually meme coming from the internet. So it was kind of an anonymous image that was produced as just for fun, for the hell of it, really, by some anonymous guy on the internet, that just for the fact of becoming like a real object in a white cube kind of a institutional space suddenly becomes a masterpiece. The context of it turns it from being something that's just funny to something that's like interesting, worth reviewing, worth photographing, worth paying a ton of money to buy. Of course, once we reveal it, the price dropped dramatically. But some people came back and review it again, this time with this extra layer added on top. I was surprised of how cool they were with the idea. I guess they accepted it, first of all, because they knew us, so they wanted to make a show with us in the gallery, and they kind of expected. And second, because the whole plan was kind of planned out clearly since the beginning. We didn't we're not art forgers. We didn't want to sell it, it was very clear that after a while we would have claimed it as ours. Basically, it was like, we have a show, we do half a show as a Catalan, then other half a show as ours. So, they knew that they could go back to all the people that inquire, the journalists and so on, and be telling them. And they thought hopefully they're going to understand why we did it. And as far as I know, no one got really upset.
Yeah, I think we were involved in the show. I think we were involved in the show because they knew we had been working a lot on like giving up our own identity and like be someone else for like to make artworks of ours. So they expected probably something along these lines. And also, the work itself was about how art gets produced and how art is perceived and circulates, and not much of like a prank on people. I mean, you wouldn't be able to know it's not a Catalan if you didn't know. So we were not making fun of people saying, oh, now they believed it and now we tell them it's not true. It's more like, of course, on the one end, it's the old ready-made thing that you put it in a gallery and it gets the context makes it believable on the one end, and how things start outside of the gallery with the meme, and how you as an artist, you're more of a filter for things. Like art happens through you in a way. Like things happen outside, you just decide to pick up an image and make a sculpture out of it. And then it might also go again outside of the gallery space. And in fact, it happened with this piece because after we put the documentation of it online, the photo of the cat, somebody made this. So it started circulating again online as a meme.
So yeah, I think it's interesting. It's kind of constant flux. I think it's interesting. It's more than creating like iconic, monumental works. Just seeing how things can keep changing, where they come from. You know, it's a whatever Catalan-looking sculpture, but it comes from an online meme. That is itself, who knows where that comes from, who photoshopped it and who made it. And then you take the image, it becomes a sculpture. People photograph it, it comes back on the internet as yet another thing. And like documenting all of this migration, that to me is the most interesting part. Yep. Well, that it's something I kind of already, like, that I always suspected, but you may also be just delusional, you know? Like, I'm a genius, and when I die, people's gonna recognize me. Maybe not. Maybe you're... I'm more for like the other way around, like, hey, there's no genius around here. Anything is kind of more or less a reformatting of what's already been out there. And I'm not saying that, you know, there's no creativity or no quality in art or anything. But it's, again, I'd rather focus my attention of the influences that every single work has, both before its production and afterwards, rather than on a specificity and the geniality of the single artist. Because I think that part of the art has been really overblown for too long. Celebrating this myth of the artist, like inspired and see something that other people don't do.
It's another good question.
Yeah, well, first of all, he didn't sue us, which is, I think it didn't sue us, he didn't make any lawsuit, he didn't attack us legally. And he actually, we didn't tell him nothing, we just published the work. And then the moment we sent out a press release, we sent him an email. We thought that was the best thing to do. Like, he's gonna know, he's gonna be the first to know, but like write together with the rest of the world. And he replied with a super nice email. So he was, that's also something I really appreciate about him, that even if he's like becoming such a big artist, he still keeps that kind of lightness that a lot of artists lose when they get older and more established, more recognized. They like to play around when they're younger and experimenting, and then when they get established, they're gonna be like, okay, now, you know, I'm a serious guy. I'm gonna sue everyone. And
so he said something about. He said something along like, "You guys are too much ahead of our time," something like that. So it seems like a compliment. Maybe it was an insult. So no, let me make the thing to it. Okay.
Let's move on.
Yeah,
we're super late.
We're very late. Sorry,
Super late.
I said it from scratch. Like, we're real slow.
Let's talk about a totally different work.
Yeah, there's a very recent work. This is, I think, one of our last projects. It's called Amelie's Video, and it started with another project we do. We always work like that. We do something we're not happy with, and then we make another version, and it's kind of better, we think. So we did this work called No Fun, in which we staged Franco's suicide on a chat forum, and we filmed the reaction of people seeing it in real time. And but when we are not going to show this, but when we saw it, we thought, okay, we made a mistake, because the reactions are so interesting in comparison to Franco staying there just like doing nothing. So we thought maybe the next project is going to be just about reactions without the work itself. The work itself will be invisible, and the reaction will be the work. So we put a call online for, we were looking for people to see the worst video ever. And if you replied to this online call, a girl named Emily, who was our assistant back then, would come to your place with a laptop and show you the video and film your reaction with a webcam. So Emily went to all the places, like all the apartments, all the people who answered the call, showed them the video, filmed them, and after that we destroyed the original video. So there's no way to see the original video anymore. The only way to see it is through people's reaction to the video. And
which we edited together in yet another video. That's the only thing that now is accessible. I'm going to show you a couple of clips from that. The first one is like 3 minutes long, is the beginning.
I feel like I want to watch it under the covers.
Okay, that's great.
Okay. That's seriously what I want to do right now. Okay. And I don't even know what this is, but...
Okay, I'm about to watch Emily's video. I'm about to watch Emily's video. I'm about to watch Emily's video.
Alright, so I am about to watch Emily's video. Here we go.
Alright. You ready? Are you ready? Go.
Will you think less of me if I watch something that you don't watch?
No.
Stop making me. God, you are awful dogs. Hi, I'm going to watch Emily's video.
We're in New York City, in the East Village, and I'm about to watch Emily's video.
Oh, you know what it reminds me of? This Dali film. You know? Yeah. The razor blade in the eye. Yeah. I'm showing on Dali. Sure.
Oh. Oh.
Oh. Mm.
I can't watch it anymore.
yeah, it's horrible to chop up the videos, but
So people could, of course, leave at any moment if they didn't want to watch it anymore. And towards the end of the video, it becomes way more sad and tragic, if you want. So this is a 1 minute from towards the end of it. We never answered any question that's related to the original video. You have to be happy with this second-hand experience. Absolutely not. There was very little context. It was a super short online call that said there is this video that is really horrible, really graphic, really explicit, that no one is supposed to watch. Like, it's gross. But if you still want to see it, you should call this number. And this call got like forwarded to people, sent it to friends and so on. So it very quickly became like detached from us. So people did not know that it came from us. And even if I don't know most of the viewers, so they had no context at all. For them, it could have been even a sex appointment with a undercover prostitute for what they know. This Emily girl is gonna come to your apartment or something.
Yeah, in fact, there were some awkward moments.
Yeah.
Like, Emily went to people who thought it was sort of date or an appointment with her.
Because it's this girl from the internet coming to your apartment with a laptop showing you a video. It's a little bit shady. But I guess that's what we didn't want. All our friends being in there watching it. We wanted it to get out to an audience that as broad as random as possible.
They knew they were filmed and they could leave anytime. That was the agreement, and they could decide if they want to be alone or with Emily while they were watching the video. And we very often film with webcams, and we like because they're considered like intimate, like private cameras. But in fact, we realized they're very intrusive in a way because you forget you're being filmed. Like, you don't see them. It's not like being filmed with a huge camera. Like, they disappear and you act really spontaneously. So I think that's what we wanted to achieve. And also, all of them were filmed in very like private settings, mostly like their apartments or their bedrooms. And so there is this very intimate feeling. And yeah, I'm very sorry we had to chop it because it's 20 minutes. But if you see all of it, there's sort of, you can kind of tell the story of what's going on because they talk and they give some hints about what they're seeing, which is on the one hand they say something, on the other they're kind of mystifying it because some of them focus on details of the video, so you think it's about these details, but in fact it's just details. And we love like poor images. We like this very blurry effect that the webcam creates. And yeah, I hope webcams will never be very good cameras, and we won't lose this poor image quality.
Well, I guess since it's a kind of for us, this webcam aesthetic, for us meaning like all of us, is somehow still new. It's only 10, 15 years old. We still identify like poor images with something that's authentic, I think, maybe subconsciously. The moment you see something that's so raw and so grainy, the quality is so bad, the audio is so bad, you kind of take for granted that it's real, that it's not a production with actors and so on, which is something we aim at. There is this theory of the open work of art, where an artwork that's as opposed to a closed work of art. So, for example, if you see a painting of a woman crying and she's holding a dead baby, that's a closed narration. It's a traditional way of telling a story. Like, you have all the elements for you to put together a story. She's crying because the baby died. That's a closed narration. Open work of art is an artwork that's actually missing a big part. So let's say you get that same painting and you crop out the baby and only keep the face of the woman crying. That's more open, because the moment you see it, like, hey, like very instinctively asking yourself, why is she crying? And you come up with a solution. There is not a solution. It's not a rebus that you have to figure out. every person will interpret it in a different way, of course, depending on expectations and so on. So an open work of art is a work where there's something that's very strong, like a big part of a story is just missing, is not there. And I actually really like a lot artworks that rely on that, because I find it one of the difference between, let's say, art and entertainment. You know, entertainment usually, like everything is packaged. Like you see a Hollywood movie and you get the whole story. Prequel, the action, consequences, and so on. So, you know, you sit down, eat popcorns and watch it and enjoy it. Most of the artworks I kind of am more interested in don't have that kind of completeness. They lack a lot. They miss a lot, and that hole you have to fill it up with your imagination. And of course, you fill it up depending on who you are, where you are, in the mood you are, your fear. In this case, of course, if you ask anyone, if I would ask any one of you what is the worst video ever, anyone would have a different opinion. We got a lot of very strange requests when we wanted from people who wanted to see it. A very specific request. For example, I'm totally up for seeing it unless there's kittens involved. Like if there's like kittens, I don't want to see it. So we would ask, are you okay with child pornography? And they would be, yeah, sure. If there's no kittens, I can see it. Or I want to see it unless there's fingernails involved. If there's fingernails, I don't want to touch it. And again, we're like, yeah, but how about torture of animals? Yeah, sure, anything but not fingernails. So I realized that everyone had his very personal phobia, very personal idea what the worst thing ever is. If I think to the worst video ever, I do not think to kittens. I would think to something completely different, which I don't want to say here because it make me look like a perverted freak.
So, no, Franco. You're not. So,
there is this beautiful text by philosopher Danto, Arthur C. Danto. You probably, maybe you read it, the book he did recently called, what's it called? The Danto book, the one on the invisible, What Art Is, where he's thinking, why is it that every definition of art is never satisfy us? Like we keep, making new definitions of what art is. We've been doing it for hundreds of years, and they always get updated. They always get outdated very quickly, and then we make a new one, and then it gets outdated, and we make a new one. And he thinks that the reason why all these definitions were failing at the end by any philosopher, art historian, and critics is because all of them focused on what's visible about art, on the aesthetic of art, what you can see about it. And apparently there is nothing that's visible that all artworks from all eras share. It just changes too much and too quickly. And so there is nothing really, there's not a common ground visually. So his logical conclusion, well, then what makes art, it must be invisible. So if you cannot see the difference, aesthetical difference between a Brillo box that's done by Warhol and an actual Brillo box in the supermarket, but they are different. It means that difference is not visible. It's not in you can perceive it with your eyes. It's something that your eyes cannot see. So it's invisible. And what you don't see is actually very powerful. Sometimes more than what you see.
So yeah, as much as we're trying to disappear as artists behind other identities, in a way, behind pseudonyms sometimes, behind other institutions or other artists we used to, we sometimes identify with. We're also trying to make our artworks invisible or show the invisible part. So most of the times we are trying to avoid to show the work itself, but the reactions. So the
like using the audience as the audience reaction as the work itself. So without the audience, the work doesn't exist. It's not just people watching an artwork of ours, but the experience of watching it is the actual artwork. Without audience, there's no work. Like usually you do art because you want to reach an audience. In our case, like we reach an audience to make art.
Oh, to finish up, when we show this video, it's usually on this big screen, which is flipped, and most of the screen is actually black. And the video is just on top of it. So
And the video is placed, like in this case, this would be the entrance of the room. So you would come from here, and you would see this monitor from the back.
You'd see a corner of a monitor. You enter the room, and you can see the screen and the video. So the first thing you would see is usually somebody watching the video. And when you're watching the video, you see yourself reflected in this black part, it's sort of black mirror. So you see a video of people watching something, and while you watch, you see yourself watching. Does that make sense? I hope so.
So we exhibit these works in different ways. We're not super, we consider that they're digital works. So their nature is unlike paintings, like we said before, they are malleabili. How do you say that?
You can reshape.
Reshapeable, maybe, or something.
Portable.
Let's say portable. They can change. So we're not big fans of giving super specific instruction how the work must be exhibited that way. We're more flexible. We actually change it a lot depending on the context. So in this case, for example, it was in the middle of a room, leaning to a column, keeping the same concept. You would enter from the back and see the back of it before you see the front. But we also showed it in cinemas, for example. This is a cinema here in New York, like a normal theater where you would go and you would see this strange, super low quality webcam video. And of course,
I'm sorry, and in the making, we were putting up clips from people's reaction on YouTube. So first, you would see people's reactions on YouTube, like these little clips. And then we got, after some time when we had collected all of them, to the final edited version.
So this is yet another version of it. It's all clips from, single clips. We do not consider any of these versions like the official work. They all make the work. And they also speak to different audiences. More likely in an audience that see them out of context on the internet, on YouTube, they will just see them and being kind of maybe laugh at it or being surprised and thinking that it's a kind of weird internet phenomenon that they didn't know about. People that see them in a gallery is more likely more informed, that they're going to read the press release, they know that it's an artwork of some sort. People seeing it in a theater is probably halfway in between. Some may know a little bit more than others, and we like that kind of, again, reaching different audiences in different contexts, and hopefully the work is going to kind of adapt to all of them. Well, a painting, wherever you put, change the context, but the work it is what it is. It's that painting.
But the video is.
No, the video, depending on how you execute, is going to change. Like a video projected is not the same thing as a video in a computer, and it's not the same thing as a video in a monitor. It changes dimension, changes the audio, changes the color. The context changing, but the object does not change in itself. It's oil on canvas. Like the dimension of it, it coincides with the medium. It's the same thing. You cannot take off the image. Well, first of all, I'm not saying that this is better than the other. I'm just it's just a medium thing. When you have a digital file, you have a piece of code, like zeros and ones, a number basically, that human being cannot interpret. Is a file. You need something like a technology to interpret it, to execute it. So in that sense, every execution is going to be different because every computer shows it in a different way. Again, different scale, different formats. I could make a text out of the video file and still would be the same work. While a painting or a drawing or an object does not, it gets old or something, but that's a change in medium. That's a change in medium. Like I'm taking medium and turning into another medium. While in this case, what I'm saying is, with a video you cannot but execute it and change it. While with a painting you can change it, but you're not obliged to. You can even just keep the painting. You can keep a sculpture, and it's a sculpture. With a video you cannot keep the video because the digital video. With a film, yes, like a film strip is a film strip. With a digital file, every time you see it, it's an execution of that thing, and it's different because the hardware, the computer changes, and so the interpretation of it changes. It's weird. You get almost philosophical with that. But again, I'm not saying, of course, most of people would think that this is a problem, not a plus. This is a problem that digital has, that you're relying on a technology in order to see the actual thing. Because without the technology, you can't see it. Like a painting, we can see it with our eyes, while with a video file, you cannot see it if you don't have a computer. So in that sense, we could even think that it's less evolved of no, I'm not saying. It's just two different things. When I make a sculpture, I make something that stands there, people will see it, turn around it. When I make a file, I know that people will need some tool to interpret it. And they're different. And I think it's silly to make one look like the other. No, it's silly. It's just, I think it's more interesting to understand what you're working on and its plus and its virtues and its problems. And I think that the virtue for me of working with digital is exactly this broad possibility of interpretation. Like, again, the same video can be put in a theater or on a computer, can be spread on the internet and so on. And that's something you cannot do with a drawing. I mean, sorry to interrupt you. You could do with a painting, but with a documentation of a painting, not with the thing itself. I can't send that original thing in the whole world. No, you cannot have 1 million people watching the same painting at the same time. It's like impossible, in the whole world. It's not a matter of curator or artist or this. I'm talking about the painting, not the reproduction of the painting. You can have 1 million people seeing a photo of the painting, but then you get in the digital realm, it's a whole other thing. The primary experience is going to be you seeing that painting, while in the case of a digital file, the primary experience, anything is a primary experience. Like if I see it on my computer from home, if you see it here projected, if you see it in an exhibition, it's the same thing. Every experience is a primary. While with a painting, the person, I think, who sees the real thing is privileged. Like you're seeing the real thing. Everyone else is going to see, at best, a documentation or reproduction of it, a photograph. I guess what I'm trying to say is every time you see it, it's going to be different, whether or not you like it. It's not a choice. It's implicit in the medium. Yeah. Like if it's digital, every execution is going to be different, whatever. There's not going to be two people in the world that's going to see the same thing. Yeah, but even in the same computer, because the luminosity of the screen changes, the connection to the internet changes, the hardware changes. It's a very, it's a very simple thing. Maybe I'm making it bigger than what it is. Okay, enough with digital.
Yes, exactly. Maybe we just
got stuck to this
discussion to curators. We're going to have this problem whenever they have to pick up a painting or a digital work or a video. Yes, I think, we showed a few pieces. So
let's wrap this up.
We're done.
Let me see. It could be there as just a poster. You have a house, you need to shoot a movie, so you put up stuff on the walls to make it more realistic. Just a generic poster. No one knows what it is. No one knows that it's a fake movie. No one knows that it was designed by us. No one knows nothing about the original artwork. Or it could be there as an artwork, actually. So the guy doing the striptease is a collector, and he's owning an artwork of ours in his own house. It's possible. Unlikely, but possible. Or it could be actually a movie poster. It could be that the director knows that the poster is fake, that the movie never existed, the director of this movie, of the Italian one. And he's playing with his own audience. It's kind of a, how do you call it, like a tongue-in-cheek thing, where he's like, let's see who recognizes that during the striptease. And to me, this is interesting, not because it's a work of ours, but because there is no answer to that question. We cannot know why the poster is there. And that actually depends on who's watching. Depends on the audience. Like, depending on how much information you have, you're going to interpret it in a different way. So Nadine, for example, recognized our work, so for her it was evident, but any of you will just see a movie poster in another movie. So depending on who's the audience, the meaning of the work completely changed. I like that a lot. I like works that's meaning changes depending on who sees them and where they see them. A painting is a painting. like what it is and its own, like the medium and the content is in one single object, it's one thing. If you take a painting, you put it in a gallery, it's a painting. If you throw it away, you put it in a garbage, it's still a painting. If you put it in a museum, it's a painting. It's not changing what it is. It may change value, of course. More likely, the one in the museum is more expensive than the one in the garbage, but it's the same thing. With digital artworks and with a lot of the things we do, it's not like that. The object changes depending where you put it, depending on the context, and depending on who sees it. We like that. I think that, I don't know why, but in the art in general, too much focus has been put on the artist and on what they do and how they do it, like the moment of production, like their vision, their inspiration, and how they make art. And too less focus has been on the audience, like who sees art? Like where does it go once it's produced? Why people see that stuff? Do they use it? Do they understand it? Where does it end up? In a museum, or in the internet, or in a TV, or in the garbage? And maybe because we don't have huge egos like me and her, we always identify ourselves, I would say, as much with the audience as with artists. We never made that leap of like, oh, I'm no longer a viewer. Now I'm a producer, I'm an artist. We actually never crossed that line. We keep like going back and forth between these two things, like doing something and watching the reactions and then incorporating the reactions. Very often we use the audience as like raw material almost, as like something you can manipulate in order to make the work. So like without the audience, you wouldn't have the work itself. So in this sense, I'm not saying audience as someone who just happens to see your exhibition or read about it in a magazine or whatever, but the audience becomes themselves the form that the work takes. We work a lot with the internet since the beginning and with videos, but these things, the works we did, are pretty much dispersed on many different mediums. They're not all on the internet, they're not all in a gallery, they're not all in a video. They're kind of like a little bit everywhere. Sometimes even the same work could be in these different places at the same time. When I say the internet, the aspect that, the thing of the internet that is more interesting for us, I would say they're probably the problems that it raised, the moral or ethical problems that this mediated communication brought about, especially using social media, social networks. So not much the surface of the internet, like its shape, its colors, its design, but more what's behind it. In this sense, we could say that we're not much into the web surfing thing, more into the deep web diving, like going below the surface and see what's behind there. That sometimes is actually non-visible from the surface. If you look at the surface of it, it's invisible. This is also a reason why we are very interested in the dark internet. The dark internet is a huge part of the internet that's not visible. It doesn't surface. That just stays down there, and it's kind of harder to reach. And we find that super interesting. When we make works, we try, or we tend, or we're not, maybe we're
Ancora candele, Marco? Dai, mi sembra di stare ad una veglia funebre.
Solo un po' di atmosfera.
Sembra un set fotografico.
In effetti un po' lo è.
Dai, su, posa queste candele, vieni da me.
Sei bella. Ti voglio guardare. Voglio che ti spogli per me.
Ma così non mi viene, dai.
Ti metto un po' di musica.
I feel your breath upon my face.
Non ci riesco, scusa.
Dai, fallo per me.
Viene, dai. Fallo tu.
You know that I
Se lo faccio io, poi però lo fai pure tu.
Ok, comincia.
and I need you, girl. So
So this is a clip from an Italian film that's called L'amore imperfetto. Love is not perfect, or something. And there's something interesting, I think, in this clip. And it's not the muscles of the guy. There's actually work of ours in there. Did anyone spotted it?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah. One? Okay.
All your students saw it.
So if you look here in the beginning, okay, can you see that United thing on the wall? Yeah. There's a poster that we designed a few years ago. Let me see if we can see it. There he is. Here it is. It says, United we stand, Europe has a mission. It's a poster of a movie, but the movie never existed. It was a fake advertisement campaign for a movie that we invented. We invented a movie and we did a campaign. I don't want to actually talk about that project, but it's interesting to me to see why, like, what is this thing doing in this film? What is our poster in this movie? Why is it there? And I don't know, of course. I don't know the director, I don't know the actors, I don't know the screenplayer. I don't know nothing about the movie. I just happened to see it by chance. And